Homeownership continues to be the American dream. I'm often asked how to start the process. So many people find themselves stuck on what to do. In part one, we learned that the answer is to arm yourself with knowledge. Knowledge is empowering. For example, credit and debt-to-income ratio are the main reasons people are denied a mortgage. Both of these variables are within your control. If you have challenged credit or are carrying too much debt, become an active participant in your recovery by taking courses either in person or online and working with a realtor, mortgage lender, or housing counselor. In part two, we're going to talk about why people who are self-employed or who are independent contractors need a team to assist them in the home buying process. We will also review the documentation required by lenders in order to issue a pre-approval letter. Remember that loan denial doesn't mean no. It just means not right now. Let's continue our conversation with Demetrius Lockett, a senior executive loan originator with Southeast Mortgage. Cash is king. I remember a loan officer said it to me many years ago. Cash is king. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that even as I talk to people about home ownership, and again, I have another guest that's going to be coming on, and I know we're going to be dealing with some of this, but it's almost like saving is a dirty word. Mm-hmm. For a lot of people, they don't have the assets. It gets back to talking about this down payment, and one of the things that you lenders look at are the assets.
Yeah.
Whether it's a retirement account, savings account, so they come up with, you're right, that little 3%, and even if they're able to get their closing costs. But when we look at this environment we're in now, it's more than that because there's a bidding war.
Yeah, and it's changing a lot when you think about, as the younger homeowners were growing up, at least preparing for saving. You have 401ks, you had your grandma in your ear, you just had a little bit of money over there, and not anymore, because think about it, people aren't on those jobs like they used to. So many people are now self-employed. Right. And you know what happens to a lot of self-employed? They spend every piece of money they get. They don't have an investment account because some months is great and some months is not. And then what about artists and singers? Before it used to be royalties. And now they're getting all their money up front. So what happens when they get too old to do what they're doing? I think that's going to, especially even with the pandemic, a lot of people decided to do their own gig. And they're self-employed and they're making good money. They're not providing the infrastructure to be able to say, I now have that savings. So that makes home ownership even more important.
It does.
Because now the equity in your home is now your only retirement program.
Exactly.
But people have to first be educated and understand it's more than just a place to lay your head. You were talking to your another guest on another one of your shows, I remember, and they were talking about the insurance and the type of liability you just have. You have a big old party, because I used to do that all the time through my 20s, not really thinking about the fact that this that you have bought and paid for and sacrificed could all be gone if something happens at that house. You don't even think about that. Because a lot of times we're conditioned to just get stuff as quick as we can, as cheap as we can. And that always is not the smartest thing when you're buying a house or getting a mortgage approved.
Well, let's go back to this and keeping it with our theme, but yes, you can buy a house. And you are talking about the fact that there's a lot more self-employed. It's like everybody has a side hustle or they're self-employed. Right. And they believe that, I make money from doing X, Y, Z, so therefore I can qualify. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about what things that a loan officer looks for in terms of qualifying a person, okay? And we'll start with this employment piece because you mentioned it.
Okay.
When a person is employed and receives a W-2.
Okay.
That's a good thing,
right.
Okay? Because you can actually track, you actually see that the employment
so that's where an employer is taking
taxes and all of those things are concerned. However, when you have a self-employed person who, depending upon their business structure, may or may not give themselves a 1099,
right?
Or a 1099 or a W-2 or whatever, They want to tell you that they have money, or let's just say they reported on their taxes. Most tax preparers are going to try to get you as large a refund as possible or limit your tax liability to whatever degree they can. And to do that, they take all kinds of deductions.
Mm-hmm.
People who want to buy a house, they don't understand what that means.
Right.
And so therefore, they bring you a tax return because you do ask to see tax returns.
Mm-hmm.
And they see, even though they may see their gross income was $100,000, the adjusted gross income may be $40,000 because their tax preparer took $60,000 worth of deductions.
Mm-hmm.
As a mortgage lender, you calculate income on that adjusted gross income.
That's correct.
Wham.
That's correct. And probably the self-employed folks are among the ones that right now probably need the most help.
I agree.
Because there's so many of them that are new to self-employment, and that there's other programs. Just like self-employment is not traditional, mortgages were really made for traditional kind of life. So there are other programs, the bank statement program we talked about before, averaging 1099. So there's other ways, but I think what's really important, what really speaks to what you're saying, is buying a house is probably one of the most expensive purchases you would ever make. So would it not make sense, like if you were having a baby, if you were facing a lawsuit, if you were getting ready to get a big contract, you would probably have a team that was working for you. And you would probably be planning and doing some reading and that kind of stuff. It's the same thing. So I think it's important, just like you got self-employed, find out what is it that I need to do to buy a house. Once you decide you want to buy a house, we call it, you have to go into processing. So processing can be 30 days, 6 months, a year, because it depends on what you've done in your past that we have to overcome for your present so that you can see your future. But you have to find out, what effect does it have that I'm self-employed? What kind of down payment, what kind of programs are available? So I just think, unfortunately, what happens with self-employed people is they don't find out this information until after they've already done their taxes.
Right.
And so in many cases, just like the W-2 or anybody else that has a high debt ratio or anything else, they become discouraged because we want things right now. So we say, oh, I can't buy a house.
Right.
And for whatever reason, I've noticed that from doing this for 26 years is that when you tell somebody not right now, all they hear is no.
Right.
And so you have pre-qualified or somebody in 2020, and now in 2027, they're still saying, I can't buy a house, not because of any new information, but because of that phone call 7 years ago. And we've got to change that. People have got to believe and find out what is needed to get their dream done.
I agree. So
because it's achievable.
It is. I believe that. And that's why I tell people, first of all, you got to start the process. You have to be willing to start. And I think a lot of people are afraid to hear what a mortgage lender will tell them. Already in their mind, they feel like it's going to be a no, or I may not be ready. And even if that's the answer, even if that's what the mortgage lender tells you, at least you now have some steps. And that's one of the things. First of all, I'm so glad you're on my team.
Yeah, I'm glad
my team anyway. And any good realtor will have a team.
Right.
And a loan officer is one of those people. But because you have to be willing to educate. You have to take the time and educate. And it's not, like I said, enough just to say, well, no, not now. What are the steps you need to take to get to home ownership, to become mortgage ready? So let's back up. I was asking you because a lot of times when I will have people, send people to you and they fill out the loan application and we're moving along in the process, it's so funny because they call me for everything.
Oh, I know. I know.
I do appreciate you because you're trying to take some of the weight off of me, but it's okay. They trust me, and I know that they trust you, but it's just that they feel like, well, this is my realtor. She needs to know everything.
Almost feel like say, tell him that.
But one of the things that I want you to let's talk about up front, because I hear all the time is, why do they need all of this paper? Why do they need all of that? I want people to know up front what documents all lenders ask for. It's not just a Demetrius or a Southeast, all documents. So will you run through those documents for me?
Absolutely. And keep in mind, what we're doing, again, is we're speaking to guidelines.
Yes.
That's why one mortgage company, the next mortgage company, all of us have to ask for the same paperwork, because we want Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA to approve the loan and insure it. So those documents are pretty easy. I remember when I originally started in this business, I had just graduated school, and I thought getting a mortgage, a big deal. So I had my first couple clients, and I got the list from my manager, and I kept thinking, this is it to buy a house? And it really is very simple. You just need a few documents.
Okay.
And they're documents that you should know where they are anyway. And I will even say this, if you're watching this show, it means that you probably are really interested in being educated and in making sure that you're always prepared. Go ahead and prepare these documents now. I don't care if you don't want to buy a house for 10 years. Prepare the documents, and then as the documents continue to come in, you just put them in that place. That's probably the biggest thing that stops a lot of people, because they think, oh, documents, I can't figure out where they are. I get it, but any dream is worth working for. The documents you need are a copy of the driver's license and social security card. Easy, in your wallet. Your last 2 paychecks. If you're really working, that should also be easy, because everything now is electronically set. So you're pushing a button, getting your last 2 pay stubs, and from that same system, you're getting your last 2 W-2s. Then you're going to go back online to your online bank and get your last 2 bank statements. Now, the one thing that is not on, or there's 2 things that are not on that list. One is your source of where your down payment is coming from. That could be your 401k, it could be your savings, it could be a gift from grandma, it could be something else. But wherever that is, we need to figure that out, document that as well. I did not ask for tax returns, you notice on that list. I will, so you can put that down, get your tax returns. But right now, the only ones that typically have to have a tax return are going to be your self-employed people, or people that have rental income or some kind of other income that flows through on just the tax return. So if you're self-employed and you have a side gig, and let's say you write all the money off on your side gig, but during the day, you're a nurse, we would just use your nurse income.
Because with
But, let's say you're a nurse and you are taking expenses from your income that you want us to count. Or let's say you're on an investment property with your aunt or your brother, then we're going to look at your tax returns, and then anything that's negative on your tax return will be deducted from your day job. So let's say you make a whole bunch of commissions. I could need your tax return. So it's just really important to have the conversation with the mortgage person. That is free. No one should charge you for that conversation. And you know at least which way to start going, which documents you need. But that's the list. Driver's license, social security card, pay stubs, W-2s, bank statements.
So let's talk pre-approval, pre-qualification. What's the difference?
Pre-qualification means I have a conversation with you, just like you're doing with the buyers that call in. How much you make, how much you spend, how's your credit, and then making a decision from that. We know that decision does not mean anything, because in mortgages, you trust but verify. So to get you verified, I've got to check everything you just told me. You said your credit was great. What's your social security number so that I can check that? You said you make $800,000 a year. Great. Send me your pay stubs or your tax return so I can verify that. And just know, especially since the last big decline in housing, all of the stuff that we ask for gets verified. And I just say that for the people in Happy Land that think some people have 2 sets of tax returns or want to make up pay stubs. They will catch you, and it is a federal crime. Right. It's not worth it.
No, it's not.
Because you can do it the right way. It just may take a couple more months. But
let me tell you my term that I use. I said, when you apply for a mortgage loan, they will do a financial colonoscopy. If there is anything to find, they're going to find it.
Absolutely.
Which I want to just, to a little aside, to those of you who owe student loan money, I had a client, we were sailing along. He was going to get his house. Everything was going fine till a lender called and said he showed up on a Cavers report. I remember it being the very first time I heard of a Cavers report.
And a Cavers report is a report that does not show on your credit report.
Tell them.
It does not attach to your social in any real way. And I'm glad you brought this up because, as you know, my job is to get people approved and into a home. And often I work with great realtors like Ann. And of course, everybody's question whenever anything goes wrong is, why are we just now finding out?
Mm-hmm.
Because there are things that happen after I take your application and get those documents. There's a whole team of people that support me that have to run documents and run numbers and get information. I cannot possibly do it all. Nor would any company spend all the money that's required to do all of the checks before you actually have a contract. So once you get a contract, that file goes to an assistant and they're doing all kind of background checks. Now, some realtors or people would say, well, can we do the background checks before we go out? Sure. But if you don't find a house for 3 months, we're doing a background check again. And now something comes up. Plus, we just wasted money on the first background check, and now we're out of business.
I got it.
So it just, again, you have to be part of your own rest. Things don't disappear. If you had a student loan and you never paid it and you got money from it, it's going to show up somewhere. And even if you think it's not, be honest with your loan officer. Your loan officer is your Johnny Cochran to this whole thing. They should know where all the bodies are buried, everything. Not because I don't make the final decision, but my job is to put it in such a way. You talked about going from company A to company B, and one company saying no, and the other one says maybe, and the next one says yes. You didn't change it all. The difference is my job is to take all of your information, writing letters and all those kind of things, and put it in like a book form so that we can present it to a person called an underwriter who will look through that file and look over here at the guidelines that have been written for your financing and say, wow, those two really meet. I can sign this. They'll probably pay, and I'll probably have a job tomorrow. Then they sign it. That's all lending is. They want to know, just like you would want to know, if I lend you $10, are you going to pay me back?
That's bottom line.
That's all they want to know. And there, don't get me wrong, there's redlining and all that other stuff, but at the end of the day, there are guidelines that have to be followed.
And see, that's the difference between an experienced loan officer. I really, and I take
I agree. I agree.
Because it was so funny. I had a client who was with one loan officer who said, can't be done, can't be done, can't be done. I talked with another loan officer and they said, well, how about A? How about B? Have you tried C? I made a mistake, my bad. I went back to the original loan officer and said, have you tried A, B, C? And they did it, and the other loan officer got mad because I told them what to do. You know, so
that's his intellectual property he shared with you.
Exactly. So that's there's so many different ways we can go. I can go with you because I can talk with you all day. But let me say something about this Cavers report.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, we found out it was from a student loan. Student loan that the person forgot over 20-something years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They thought because they had not heard from the student loan company, they thought it went away.
Can I answer that?
Sure.
There's whenever there's an error on your credit report, the creditor has to be alerted. If the creditor can't prove it or if it's wrong, there are financial what's the word? Their costs. They have to pay if they're doing stuff wrong. So a lot of times, especially when we were having the foreclosure stuff and short sales and all that kind of stuff, a lot of people don't even have their mortgages on their credit report anymore because they couldn't keep up with the plans and the programs and the payments and not the payments. And if you're reporting my information erroneously, I can sue you.
Right.
So just depending on the capacity of whoever's managing that account, because they've got to send the information to the reporting agencies. They've got to validate it. They've got to have information to be able to support if they do it wrong. So
therefore, it never showed up on his credit report. There's a Cavers report.
Cavers is the credit alert system that FHA has.
Right.
So the Cavers, and this is something else, Cavers will only be an issue if you're doing a government program.
Let's say it's FHA loan.
Because it's government Caver system. So if you're doing a conventional loan, guess what?
It wasn't showing up.
Wasn't going to show up.
And that's
But
why.
that's why you talk to your loan officer and say, I think maybe, instead of, I'm in the room now with the underwriter and the president of the company fighting for you, and they go, did she tell you about her student loan? And of course.
And I think that's why when you started even talking about credit scores and bringing the credit scores up, go for at least a 680. Go for where you can qualify for a conventional loan.
Absolutely.
Okay, listen, want to talk about one other thing.
One last thing,
Okay.
real quick, I promise. If you don't have a credit score, think you don't, you probably do. But if you don't, get a secured credit card.
Right.
Secure credit card simply means you go to your bank, you open up like a savings account, you deposit money in there. It can be as low as $300. They will report to the credit bureau just like you have a regular credit card. Don't really spend much money on it, maybe $50 or whatever. It's a real small amount, and it will start giving you a credit score. I saw a client that had like a 550 score, but it wasn't because they had bad credit. It was because they had no credit, which also can end up with a low score. Got that into the next month. It was back up to 620. Or not back up, but it was 620 because all their other stuff was good.
So what we need to do, what we need to do, or what I think people need to do, because you talked about cavers, and that's only if you're getting a government loan. I think at the beginning you said, hey, if you're going to be working on your credit, yes, get to that 620 or 640, but why stop there? Let's go on up. Because you need at least, or from what most lenders that I have worked with previously, in order to get that conventional loan, you need to get up to 680.
That's true.
So if we can work and get up to the 680, then we won't have to, that wouldn't even be an issue.
Correct.
If my client had at least that score, that Caver's report wouldn't even been a fact. So,
and if you can get 680, might as well get 700.
I agree.
Because you can really start flying through the air at a 700 and higher score.
Okay.
You can do stuff that other people can't do. You get a better interest rate. You get more consideration. You get more programs available to you.
Now, guess what?
What?
And I knew this was going to happen.
What?
I have tons of things to talk to you about,
Well,
but we're
let's talk.
running out of time.
Oh, get another tape. Rewind the camera. Do something.
That means you're going to have to come back.
I will. I would love to.
Okay, so let's do this. 5 takeaways. Now,
Okay.
I know that you've got about 20 of them because we've talked about so much here.
5
But I'm going to
takeaways.
let you give me 5 takeaways that you think are most important, because our goal is for everybody to get a loan.
I've seen this show long enough to know that I only need 4. So you go ahead and give me yours first while I'm thinking about 4.
Well, I think my first takeaway is plan. If you have a dream of home ownership, see, everybody's path to home ownership is different, hence our foundations. And I haven't talked much about foundations, but everybody has a path. And our paths may be different. It doesn't mean we can't get there, but we may have to go different routes. So it needs to start back with a plan and being able to see what is the path you need to take to get to home ownership. And know that there are people out there who can help you identify the steps that need to be taken.
I agree.
Your realtor being one, your loan officer being another. And there's a lot of conversation about, do you call the loan officer first or the realtor first? I'm a realtor. I believe you call me first. I'm going to send you to the loan officer. Okay? And that's important. And I'll have a conversation about that with another realtor. I will send you, because not all loan officers are the same. And you want to make sure as a realtor to send your client to a loan officer who has some expertise. So that would be my first takeaway. Have a plan.
I think that's good. Let's stick to one word answers. Plan is one. I think believe. I think that's probably the biggest one. You have to believe that it's possible. You have to change your mindset.
Love it.
Because everything that you've done up to that point has got you an apartment. Now we need to get you to think so that you can get a house, because it's a mindset.
Everything you've done has got you an apartment.
Hopefully. I think that you should not give up. Commit. 4th, I think education is important.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Educate.
And probably the biggest thing is do something.
Is to what?
Do something. Outside of going to home buyer seminars every weekend, Just do something. Make a phone call. Order your credit report. Create the folder that we're talking about so that you know where your documents are. Talk to other homeowners. You know what? Go look at houses. Just go look at them if you want to. Just do something to bring you in the arena of what other homeowners are doing. Go to Home Depot every Saturday. I don't care. Do something.
And I'm saying...
And start. Oh, here's another one.
Okay.
Sorry. Last one. Number 5.5. Save.
Yes.
If you are living in a $1,200 apartment and you say you want to buy a, I don't know, $250,000 house, and that $250,000 house is $1,600 a month, and you say you're ready to move today, that means I should be able to look at your savings statement from now until the time that you move, and at the very least, you're saving the difference between what you're paying in rent and what you would have to pay in mortgage. We have to get in the habits. We have to change our habits.
That's
which
really
is all
good.
All of that stuff.
Many people have financial questions and they don't know where to get answers. Now you do. We want to be your resource by providing you with educational information in a way you can easily understand from people you can trust. I invite you to send your questions to Ann at askannanything.com. Your questions form the basis of our show. Additionally, we offer live Zoom educational classes on home buying and credit that you will want to take advantage of. Remember, home buying starts with planning. For more information or to register for our course, go to askann.com. Now, if you enjoyed today's show, please click like and submit. I look forward to seeing you next time.